Is Bitcoin competing with Trump coin or any other token or not? I think the last 2 weeks have been extraordinary for Bitcoin and for the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve because momentum is really building. I think Friday night after that summit, I think the most important thing said in this industry in 4 years was said Friday night, and I think it missed a lot of people's attention. I don't think people really realize what happened. And this is after hundreds of meetings and talking to people in the Senate, in the House, in the SEC, in the CFTC, in the White House, every industry participant, all the Bitcoin investors, all the crypto investors, all the crypto exchanges, all the policymakers. After lots of conversations and after listening to every word uttered by Gensler, by all the regulators, after listening to every minute of congressional testimony, here's my opinion. The president directed that should come to his desk by August.
Bitcoin has become a strategic asset for the US government, with Michael Saylor revealing that various agencies have amassed large amounts through seizures. The creation of a Bitcoin reserve shows that the US is no longer treating Bitcoin as speculative, but as part of its long-term financial strategy. With Trump returning to office and institutional adoption accelerating, Saylor believes Bitcoin may be on the verge of its biggest bull run yet. Stay until the end, where Saylor reveals why this could spark the most parabolic rise in Bitcoin history. Also, if you enjoy listening to crypto-related content, please show your support by liking and subscribing to this channel by following the link in my bio, and get access to my free daily crypto updates and expert predictions direct to your inbox. Each newsletter contains on-chain data, forecasts and expert predictions. All of this is available free of charge. It only takes a moment to sign up and you can always change your mind later. Now back over to Michael Saylor.
You know, I've been watching the industry for the past 4 years or so. And I think there's been a lot of confusion, a lot of controversy, a lot of conflict, and confrontation that was all unnecessary. And it was unnecessary because of a sort of a lack of vision and a lack of creativity amongst the policy makers and the participants. So, for example, in a world where the only assets that exist are securities and commodities, and in a world where it's impossible for any innovator to issue a security, then everything has to be a commodity. And that means a token is a commodity, a currency is a commodity, a tokenized security is a commodity, and a commodity is a commodity. So what we had was people very confused thinking, well, is Bitcoin a currency competing with the dollar? Or is Bitcoin something different, a store of value competing with gold? And then, is Bitcoin competing with Trump coin or any other token or not? And what's the next Bitcoin? And so I think the crypto industry was at odds. A lot of people that want to be issuers of tokens are forced to go through this kabuki dance of pretending they're decentralized when they don't really want to be decentralized. What they want to do is access the capital markets. I think the last 2 weeks have been extraordinary for Bitcoin and for the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve because momentum is really building. 2 weeks ago, there were 3 priorities, or there were 3 things talked about in the digital assets universe. A stablecoin act, right? The Genius bill. And a bill to create stable coins and issue them in the US. And that really addresses the digital currency asset class. And then there's discussion of a market structure bill, and that's to create an entire digital assets framework, presumably to issue something akin to digital tokens or tokenized securities, digital securities. And then there is the Strategic Bitcoin Bill, or the Bitcoin Act. That was the 3rd priority. And it was a question mark of where that was in DC. There was support, but people were wondering. What happened in the past 2 weeks is the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve got elevated to a primary, if not the primary priority, with the executive order. So the president created it. And I think there are some very important things that happened. On Thursday night, about a week ago, the president issued the executive order creating the strategic Bitcoin reserve. And in the executive order designated just Bitcoin to go in the reserve, said we should never ever sell it, don't sell the Bitcoin, and then directed the Secretary of Commerce and Treasury to look for budget neutral ways to acquire more Bitcoin. That was the strongest endorsement of any asset, I don't know, in 100 years, I think, by a president of the United States. You could imagine if the president has said, I'm directing the government to acquire silver and never sell it, and I want to buy more silver, or pick any asset, it would have been an extraordinary announcement. I think that was followed up by the Digital Assets Summit. And in the Digital Assets Summit, the president reiterated those points, and the Secretary of the Treasury and the Secretary of Commerce and Small Business Administration all were present and reiterated their support. That actually was quite amazing, along with all of the industry leaders being in one place at one time, and of uniform mind. I think Friday night after that summit, I think the most important thing said in this industry in 4 years was said Friday night, and I think it missed a lot of people's attention. I don't think people really realize what happened. For 4 years, Gary Gensler at the SEC implied that, in 100 different ways, implied that Bitcoin is a commodity and nothing else is. But he implied it in a fairly obscure fashion that was kind of not very constructive, because he implied it by suing everybody else.
Well, if Bitcoin is digital money, what else is it? Well, truth number 12. Bitcoin is perfect money. Okay. What is perfect money? If you read the writings of the Austrian economists, von Mises and Hayek, they write about money, but they couldn't conceive of perfect money. Voltaire, Aristotle, Plato, they couldn't conceive of perfect money. Why? They didn't have the technology. It's kind of like asking Aristotle, tell me about clean water. How do you understand clean water if you don't have a microscope and you don't understand that there are pathogens in the water? Nobody understood perfect money until Satoshi gave it to us, and that's because it was impossible to create perfect money before modern semiconductors, modern internet, modern cryptography. So they were struggling. And you can see Hayek and von Mises, they struggle with this notion. In the Constitution, the founding fathers, who were pretty intelligent, said the only legal money in this country is going to be gold and silver coin. They kind of knew this idea, a commodity in your hand, a self-custody commodity bearer instrument, felt like good money. What they designated as perfect money in the Constitution, and we have drifted, a little bit away from that, they designated what they saw were the hardest commodities and the most liquid fungible commodities that could be used as a monetary token. And they were never perfect because you can't practically do every transaction by swapping gold and silver coins. And because gold and silver coins aren't hard capped, they have inflation. So they had defective money that was slowly decaying, that was not quite useful, but it was just, they used to say it's the worst possible way to do it, except for every other way, right? And so the significance of this truth, this basically marks the point where economics goes from being a superstition and an art form to being a scientifically based engineering discipline. You can't engineer an economic system or a monetary system before you have perfect money. It's just like trying to do good math, but 2 + 2 = 5 on Tuesday, and it equals 4 on Wednesday. And if you don't have stable numbers, you can't do math. And if you don't have stable money, you can't do economics. If you can't drink water that's not going to kill you, life is pretty ugly, right? This is profound truth. Again, misunderstood. No economist trained in the past 100 years They never took a course on perfect money. They never imagined it. But you can't really blame them. It's like if you went back to Voltaire and you say, okay, that's the smartest guy in the 18th century in France. And, he wrote shelves of books. But poke him and say, describe, radioactivity to me. And how are we going to build mobile phones and satellite communications? And he would have thought, what are you talking about? Right? It's like the most brilliant person without the instrument, the technology, can't conceive of the rational thing. And that takes us to truth 13. Bitcoin is legitimate. A short phrase, a powerful phrase. It wasn't legitimate 4 months ago. A year ago, if you try to remember where you were and what you were thinking in March of 2020, when the entire crypto industry was under massive onslaught, everybody's getting sued, right? And the most likely future was everything gets ground into the dirt. We have completely come 180 degrees. This is the most powerful person in the world sitting in at the most sacred place, the Oval Office, flanked by 2 cabinet members telling you Bitcoin is digital gold, a store of value, a commodity. Not just a commodity. If the U.S. seized 10,000 securities, all your artwork, all your houses, your planes, your trains, your automobiles, every currency, everything of value, your diamonds, your gold brooches, your silver, they'd sell it. Right? The only thing the United States does not sell is its national parks, its nuclear stockpiles, and its Bitcoin. Now, that's a shockwave that will be heard around the world. That just happened, literally days ago. It's going to take a while for that to ripple through the entire federal government. Then it will ripple through the state governments. Then it will ripple through the banking system, the insurance system, the credit rating agencies. Then it will ripple to all the banks in Mexico and El Salvador and Argentina and then Europe. It's rippling through the banks in Hong Kong and China and Japan and Abu Dhabi and Europe. How long will it take? Well, how long does it take for a profound good idea to move its way through layers and layers of bureaucracy? It'll take a while, but the innovators will actually grab this, and those that need the money, that want the money, will reach for and embrace the money, and they will be enriched by it, and there will be others that will resist it. But that entire shockwave, right, that explosion in legitimacy, that happened just a few weeks ago, happened on a Thursday night in the White House. And that's profound. We are legitimate. And as I've said before, if Bitcoin's not going to 0, it's going to 1 million.